Hello, Scott.
Hi, how are you?
I'm better with you. It's always, it's really, we always have a good time answering questions. And I don't mean that in the, are dismissive of the pain and, challenges people are sharing, but it's good for us as recovering people to, remember where we were at and give you hopefully some hope that, things can be different. We live a very different life than we did when we first started our recovery journeys. And I shared on other webinars, like, all the tools that I have learned throughout my journey, I apply, particularly in the challenging circumstances that we're in these days. And I've had to lean into all of those, but how great is that I have the tools. And so we love helping those of you that are joining us find that path too. No, you're right on time. So thank you for joining. Okay, so first question, a year and a half since discovery, disclosure 1 year ago, SA husband on step 4, progress terribly slow. He procrastinates, avoids, ignores, denies feelings, hasn't been truly committed to doing the work, headed for separation, decided SILA for 2 weeks would be best. So scared our marriage may fail due to his inability to communicate, be honest, accept himself, and my intolerance to his denial. It's the character traits he refuses to admit. He does take accountability for his actions, does not blame me. Okay, so there's a part 2. I was like, there's not a question there. But his communication is terrible. He is trying. I still have so much fear and insecurity, of course. What is the right expectation for a wife or a husband, or with a husband in treatment now? Is it really just time, hard work, and patience? I just want to stop crying. I want to give you a hug, but I can't. So can we talk about this? Like, what's the right expectations for? So every partner gets a spouse's expectations, and we talk about we don't fix everything in 14 days, but our team is, I mean, it's experts. We've got Dr. Rob and Dr. David, 2 PhD clinicians who teach other therapists around the world how to do this work, and then 3 master's level professionals working with no more than 8 men at a time. That's expert treatment. So it really does, as I was kind of babbling on a minute ago, we're all on a journey, so we it's not fixed in 14 days or 60 days or whatever the time frame is, but getting a solid foundation. And we hear consistently from from people, who the alumni who have come, the partners of alumni who have come, for those that come and are willing to do the work, they change, and partners can even see that even in a short amount of time. It's I understand you want to stop crying, but I encourage you to feel the feelings, and yeah, nothing's going to magically go, take the hurt away. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're leaning into the support sessions with the betrayed partners, on all from a codependent lens, on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. It's other partners who have been and are in the struggle as well. So I know that doesn't probably, I wish you could wave a magic wand and he would be the person that you want him to be. But I've shared on the webinars too, is like, these are people that are, preschool in tools to do emotional maturity, and they, we don't have it. We can learn it, but it's a process, and we have to learn. So I'll shut up. Scott, thoughts?
Yeah, hopefully being in treatment will jumpstart his recovery. I mean, a year and a half in, still on step 4. That's a little slow. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and breaking through the denial. It doesn't fix everything, but at least it's usually a good jumpstart, particularly for somebody who's been lagging behind with his recovery. So, I mean, I think that's a reasonable expectation, but everything be fixed when he comes home in 2 weeks? No, not reasonable. But at least maybe he'll be a little bit more honest about what he needs to do. And
well, and I think he'll have a really good direction. He'll have, this is the roadmap. This is how you get from where you are to, the next levels and beyond that, and that's what we like. But what I also hear is, when you finally said enough is when he finally, came to treatment. We have that all the time, and I don't say it well, but it's like until the pain of change is less than the pain of all the chaos and everything else we're causing, we don't change, because this is what we know. And it feels like we're taking away the one thing that we can do, that we can self-soothe, and that's like our one thing. And so our brains are, caught up in that, not understanding that being so focused on that one thing, we miss out on so much of life, and hurt so many people, including ourselves. So I'm glad treatment is. I'm glad you're here. I hope that you continue to get support for you. Do something kind for you. I always say, go get a pedicure if it's socially distant safe, and like in Arizona, I can go do that. But go do something that you can do just for you. That's just fun. So, can you tell pedicures are big on my list? So, okay. Regarding the disclosure process, should I, the addict, just disclose my infidelity during my relationship, or should I make a second list regarding major life events? Discovery was about a month ago. After communication, I've decided to get therapy and work on myself, and we decided to save and recover our relationship.
Do not do disclosure without a therapist because what you just proposed will make things worse, not better. Disclosure is a process. You need a therapist to guide you and your partner through it. You probably should both have a therapist at this point. Both of them need to be CSATs, trained in the disclosure process. Disclosure is where you get everything out, your lifetime history of sexual behaviors, including cheating and things like that. She will have, I'm assuming it's a she, since the question came from a male, but I could be wrong, so I apologize if I am. But she will have questions that she will want answered. She'll give them to her therapist, who will give them to your therapist, who will give them to you. You will answer those questions along with your timeline, and then you'll come together, you'll present the information, she'll have a chance in another session to respond, and you'll have a chance in another session to respond to her. It's a process, not an event. Do not try this at home. You will put your relationship in dire jeopardy if you do that. Please get a CSAT therapist to facilitate this.
Yes, because otherwise you will call me and go, I told her everything and now our relationship is worse. What do I do? And it's the cat is out of the bag. So when Scott was talking about all those processes, that's true, for a good, the point of a disclosure is that it sets the foundation for recovery and rebuilding trust. And just making a list or having a volume of information that you're sharing with your partner goes really badly, because it's just trauma after trauma, and you can never answer all the questions that will keep coming up, because there will always be more. So we hear that often too. It's like, well, they want to know, so I told them. Well, that's a bad choice for you and for your partner. Say, we're going to get professional help. This is like, you need surgery, you need a surgeon. You're not going to just be whacking at something yourself. So please get appropriate help, to support this. And Dr. Rob talks about this all the time. A good disclosure is like a page and a half. This is not, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of all this stuff. So getting professional help to guide you both through the process, support your partner, will, I mean, 92, there was a study done, and 92% of people who'd gone through the disclosure process, a therapeutic disclosure process, were glad that they'd done it, and it was a path to healing. So, and then there's the rest of the people that don't do a therapeutic disclosure, and the trauma is worse, and they've got a deeper hole to dig out of. It's just, don't make this worse. Get support. Next question. I have been in program for 9 years. I am struggling with cruising in my car for sex workers. I feel the pull so strong. Any suggestions to help stop? I have a sponsor, therapist, and accountability partner. I find that more and more honestly is helping. So.
Well, this, I'm going to answer this because this was one of my
Please.
behaviors back in the day. Cruising in the car. I have no idea where you're cruising now, because as far as I know, it's all moved online and it's left me behind, and that's a good thing for me. But I get it. The pull can be really strong. I mean, I've been sober from this addiction since 2002, and when I have a bad day, trust me, my first thought is the wrong thought. I want to go online. I want to look at porn. I want to do this. I want to get in my car and cruise, even though there's nobody to cruise anymore, at least not where I live. But that's still my response to stress and anxiety and loneliness and boredom is to act out. And it just means I'm still an addict and I still need to do the work every day. And I have to be honest about what's going on. So I want to commend you for coming on here and admitting you've been in program for 9 years and you're still struggling. Admitting that, it takes away most of its power. So kudos to you.
And can we talk a little bit about, okay, so that's probably a middle circle behavior, but like what are you doing with the healthy behaviors? What are you, instead of going to that, are there some things that you can, like as soon as that urge comes up that old fashioned paper, Post-it notes, have something in your pocket, it's a list of these are the things I'm going to choose as soon as that urge comes up, to reach out to my sponsor, to go to an online meeting. Beyond this, listen to a podcast.
The outer circle of your sexual sobriety plan, whether it's a circle plan or a boundary plan, whatever it is, that the outer boundary that lists the healthy things to do instead of your addiction. So yeah, but
Yes.
Talking about it is number one. So
yes, owning it. I mean, it really does diffuse the power, in a big way. So, okay. My husband has been using fantasy for over 45 years. He says he doesn't start compulsive masturbation until he was in a sexual relationship with a girlfriend. After he broke up with her, he went from woman to woman until he met me. He was 28 and I was 23. We met at church. He says he's only used fantasy and masturbation during our 40-year marriage. I question that his addiction didn't start until age 23. He had genital touching at an early age with a neighbor boy who has been, we have been separated for 2.5 years. D-Day was 3 years ago. He's 68, no formal disclosure yet. He failed his first polygraph over a year ago. What would prompt compulsive masturbation? Continues to act out every couple of months.
Yeah, there's a lot packed into here. He says he only uses fantasy and masturbation. I assume that means in addition to your sex life.
Well, they've been separated for 2.5 years.
But yeah,
So.
His cheating behavior, he's saying it's only fantasy and masturbation, which is entirely possible. But you've not had formal disclosure. You failed a polygraph. I'm not sure why we'd be taking a polygraph without a formal disclosure. But what would prompt compulsive masturbation? It's the same thing that prompts any other addictive behavior is, I'm feeling something, I don't want to feel it. So I'm going to get drunk or use or masturbate to escape my feelings. That's what addiction is. He's escaping his feelings. And he's been doing it for at least 45 years and quite frankly, probably longer. It probably started in his teenage years. But, it's hard to tell if a 14-year-old boy is a 14-year-old boy or he's got a problem with masturbation because, 14-year-old boys are a little off the cliff anyway. But, whenever it started, it probably started before he met you. And this is just his go-to escape.
Yeah, and why do people do it? Neglect, abandonment, abuse, trauma, grief, loss. There's some wound, if you have joined the Troy Love webinars on Wednesday mornings or the previously recorded, he talks about those, abandonment wounds, neglect. I mean, he talks about those, and there's something that an addict is trying to fill by numbing out, food. I mean, that's a very real one too. So there's a lot of different things, and unless he's working with a qualified therapist to really unpack all that, you probably will stay in the stuck spiral of, staying with no disclosure, with him not really working on things. And so I'm glad you're here. Take care of you.
Yeah. He needs to work with his CSAT to break through his denial.
Yeah, so I am in SLA, but having a hard time identifying which behavior I should tackle first because none of them seem to be the most prominent or that bad. Oh, I love this question. It's not that bad. I used to say that all the time too. I talk to men on Tinder, but don't meet up with them. We do not have sexual talk. I have a long-term recurring sexual partner who will not date me. I want to meet up with a loving ex. I masturbate a lot, but don't watch porn. All I know is I am trying to fill an emptiness with romance, love, intimacy. Where do I start?
Tammy?
I don't, well, I was thinking those underlying wounds, looking, I mean,
In terms of
this
what to
is,
attack first, we can't really answer that without knowing a whole lot more. But you said you're a sex love addict. I lost the question, but just but there it is. I'm assuming you're in 12-step recovery. That might be a big assumption. If you're not, get there and get a sponsor. Find a CSAT in your area. You can email us. We'll point you to someone in your area. CSAT is Certified Sex Addiction Therapist. And then you can go over all of your behaviors with those people, and they can help you formulate a sobriety plan, which it sounds like you don't have right now, and you need it right now. So, because you're not sure where to go, and until you get that clarity, you're going to be confused. You can also pick up, I don't know if this is a male or a female. If it's a male, we have level 1 work group starting on Thursday, I think. Which
on Saturday, and then the women's is going to start April 1st.
Okay, so we've got one coming for women too, but these are work groups for people who are new to the process of recovering and in your position where you're kind of confused about what to do next. So you can sign up for the online work groups, or get a CSAT in your area, or both, which would be ideal. Because that's the only way to answer this question with any specificity about where to start.
Right. So the work groups you can find on seekingintegrity.com. But yes, I was thinking that seems like a inner circle, middle circle, outer circle. What do you need to be, looking at to find what's going to be problematic, what's going to be, oh, it's a warning sign, and what's going to be healthy. But I totally get, well, I'm not that bad. I totally understand that. So,
been there, done
okay.
that.
Yeah, been there, done that. Okay, next question. What effect does nicotine have for a newly discovered sex addict?
I always love the nicotine question and the smoking question. We are a non-smoking facility at Seeking Integrity. We do it for a reason. This is a neurobiology, brain science. If you want to get a great answer to this question, tune in 2 days from now at the same time with Dr. David Fawcett, who is the king of the brain stuff. But nicotine hits the same part of the brain as sex addiction. So if I'm trying to get sober from sex addiction, but I'm still smoking, I'm still pounding on that part of the brain and keeping my whole addictive panoply alive. And the brain kind of needs to actually heal from addiction. And it's not going to happen while you're still smoking. So,
and Dr. David did talk about that on a previous recorded webinar too. But if you can join live, ask him. But he did on In the Rooms, the Super Saturday Recovery Summit. He did a video too, and we talked about that. And when he shows the dopamine, there's orgasm, and then there's nicotine, which is higher than an orgasm. Orgasm is the highest occurring natural dopamine you can have, and then there's nicotine. So that just tells you that it's keeping everything going in a. There was a study too he shared, and I won't remember the stats, but like the relapse rate for people who smoke and vape, because we have to now add vape, is much higher than, and this is across the board with any addiction, is much higher than those that don't. So
there's 100% neurobiological basis to back that up as to why.
So somebody asked, is Dr. Rob okay? Yes, he is okay. He's other focused. He's cleared a schedule for a couple days. It's all good. So he's okay. Why is their emotional maturity so stunted if he didn't start compulsive acting out till 23, not age 30 or not age 10? We don't buy that he didn't start till 23.
Yeah.
So
this is a follow-up, and we're not buying the 23.
Yeah. He was doing something. You just don't know about it. So he may not even figured it out yet. So, okay. My wife originally had a password and feed for my software filter, but was triggered and traumatized by this little thing she found now has advised me her new CSAT says she should control the filter, talk to my sponsor, CSAT, etc. I think I have been advised otherwise.
I'm not sure who's been advised to control the net nanny or whatever other filter you're using, but it should not be your wife, because
For the
all
very
that's
reason
going to do
you
is
mentioned.
traumatize the living daylights out of her. Every time she gets a report, she's going to go nuts.
Yeah.
Your
Well, and she's
sponsor
also
is
put in a position of being like the police for you, you
right.
know, and so, yeah.
Yeah, it's just not cool. Your sponsor is generally the one who has all the passwords and does the settings with you. If not, then your CSAT, um, not your wife, not your partner.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
And yeah, and I can understand that they want safety, they want it,
Right.
they want transparency, but really, and having the password,
Yeah,
sharing
there's
passwords
an
is fine.
article on Dr. Rob's personal website. I'm going to pop the link to it in the chat feature. It talks about um, filters and monitors. So, Tammy, you go ahead. I'm going to go search that.
Okay. The next question, I'm about to be a single again after a year living with an alcoholic. I'm in recovery from lust relationships other than staying single for a year. What are your recommendations, especially when major loneliness and sense of loss hits?
That's for you, Tammy. I'm still
Oh,
searching.
you're still searching. Okay. So I'm glad you're here. The more so the opposite of addiction is healthy connection. So we talk about that, on these webinars and groups all the time. So you're here joining groups. This is a female, so joining the female, and I've got resources for you. I promise. The women's Sex and Love Addiction group is Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Lacey Bentley, he has that. She's got a porn addiction group on Thursday nights, and there are more. Dr. Rob's in the rooms group on Friday night. There's a lot of female sex and love addicts that join that group as well. So there are, I put links, previously recorded webinars, podcasts. The more you are doing, that filters in good things, the better. Getting a plan though, like being we mentioned a little bit ago, having a plan, having a note. I'm feeling compulsive. I want to get in my car and go cruise. Well, what do I need to do instead? And so just taking that couple of seconds to think about it. Addiction lives back here in the brain. Our thinking is up here. That doesn't get connected if we just go act out compulsively. So having the ability to give yourself the space and time. We talk about mindfulness exercise. There's so many resources. I hope you really lean into the resources on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, because you will feel lost. You will feel a sense of loneliness. But it doesn't mean you have to act out. You're here, you're in recovery, you get to choose, and you just have to choose the right thing for the moment. And then, then tomorrow, it's just one day at a time. Thoughts, Scott?
Well, I was just going to say, you're probably also going to feel a sense of relief getting out of the house with an alcoholic. You probably won't miss that drama. Well, you'll miss that drama when you're lonely and you need some interaction, but there are lots of healthier, more rewarding interactions out there for you. So.
And that's a good point. And it's really easy. Oh, he really wasn't that bad, or he was, like he did this good. So I would encourage you, while you're in the moment, I've shared this with other people too, make a list of why you're leaving, and have that, so that when you're going, oh, romanticizing it was really, there was a lot that he did right, then you go, no, I made the right decision. I'm reading
and
this again.
make sure your sponsor and your best girlfriend also have copies of that list, so they can remind you when
Yes.
need be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you call them and say, I'm thinking I should get back together with him. No, here's the list. So
Yeah.
okay. How would you define emotional sobriety? What are steps to have emotional sobriety? Thanks. I'm a sex and porn addict. If I stop, then I start binge eating or watching TV all day. Then I repeat the cycle. So get that. So
this is exactly what we talked about earlier. The whole crux of addiction is I don't want to feel something, so I'll look at porn, or I'll masturbate, or I'll eat donuts, or I'll drink, or I'll get high,
or I'll do all of them at the same time.
Right. What's the sex addiction movie? Thank You for Sharing. Josh Gad plays a sex addict. He's a doctor, and he's engaged in some behaviors. He's about to lose his license, but he's also got an eating problem. And So he doesn't look at porn one day, so he goes out and buys a dozen donuts, and then he's shoving donuts in his mouth, and he gets so mad and he throws them away. But then he can't stay away from the porn, so he literally digs in the trash and pulls the donuts out and eats them. This is what our addictions do to us. Feelings are so intolerable that we'll do anything to avoid them. And emotional sobriety is being able to sit there with their feelings and tolerate them. And outer circle behaviors, the healthy stuff we can do, and mostly reaching out to other people. And if you're able to have 12-step meetings in person, I find that is the best way to get emotional sobriety, is to go to the meeting and just vent. And people will nod and make you feel like you're sane, even when you feel like you're not. So yeah.
Yeah, and I concur. The out of control and bouncing from one thing to the other, or using multiple at the same time. It's all problematic, and it keeps you from feeling anything. You miss the good as well as the bad, because we're all numbed out. We miss the good too. Okay, next question. I'm a porn and sex addict for nearly 3 decades. Discovery was 11 months ago, and drip disclosure occurred many, many times, of which I am ashamed of. Shame is a useless emotion. So I hear ya. You regret that behavior. Where are we now? I have remained sober from acting out since discovery. That's awesome. I attend 5 to 6 SA meetings weekly and see a therapist every other week. For the first time in my life, I'm learning to stay in my emotion and not run from it past or seeking to act out. I am beginning to see others' pain versus only seeing mine. I have been separated from my family for all 11 months. My question is, what is the best way I can support my wife and family? So much good stuff. Thank you for sharing all of this. I'm sorry that you're still separated from your family, but wow, that's the recovery journey, is I'm willing to sit in the uncomfortable, just as Scott was saying a minute ago. So
Do you have thoughts on his question
well,
there?
yeah, out of the doghouse, we talk about this all the time, but it comes to mind because it's about how do we rebuild trust. Showing up. It sounds like family, so it sounds like kiddos. So if you're seeing the children on a regular basis and you're supposed to be there at 5 o'clock, you're there at 4:59, at the latest, because you're on time. You do what you say you're going to do. And hopefully your wife is getting support as well, that that she is getting some pro-dependent aligned support as well. If you're just separated, though, I would really encourage the two of you to have the conversation of what is the plan, because as somebody else just shared, 2.5 years and there's no plan. So is there a plan? Because otherwise you guys stay in the in the very difficult spot. And you've done drip disclosure. I would encourage you to clean that up, work with your therapist, get support, and have a proper disclosure. Even if you think she knows everything, you'll be amazed if you're going through the work. You may think of something, or who knows, but I would encourage you to do a professional disclosure. So what are your thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, I just want to say, drip disclosure, is little bits and pieces and admitting to only what she knows or what you think she knows, or and it's a new trauma every time. It's a new betrayal every time. It's death by paper cut. She is still going to bleed to death. If you do a proper disclosure supervised with the therapist, you avoid all those problems. So please, so if you haven't done a proper disclosure, I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to sit down with a couples therapist, or with your therapist and her therapist, if you both have one. And like Tami said, what's the plan? We're 11 months into this. We're still separated. I'm doing my work. Can we reintegrate? Can we recover as a couple? And, I think it's time to set some boundaries on what you're looking for, what she's looking for, what the relationship is looking for. I mean, there's sort of 3 entities here: you, your wife, and the relationship, and maybe a 4th if you've got family and kids. And everything needs its own priorities, and you got to find a way to work them all together.
So professional help really does make a difference, but yeah, I mean, I don't know where she's at on the spectrum of how, yes, traumatized, but hopefully she's, been getting some support. But yeah, not having a plan, it just means that this continues, and then 2 years goes by, and here you are, and having clear definition of what is she expecting from you, like what does she need to see realistically, not impossible boundaries, but what does she really need to see that you are making progress, that you are becoming trustworthy, and you're not perfect, you're still going to be, we neither are we, so you're still going to have those issues, but it can, there should be some hope that you guys can work it out. So okay, next question. My betrayed spouse is frustrated with hearing others that have struggled and not made progress, got divorced, where she can hear people who have made it through this very tough process with happy endings. She feels a need to hear people who have made it. There are so many, and unfortunately, often with betrayed spouses, they stop going to the groups when things get better. And it's really unfortunate because then it's the people who are, in more pain. It's new, or they've had to file for divorce because, somebody just wasn't showing up. But, I've got a starfish ornament on my desk that a client sent. They did their work. The short version of the story is they did their work. They were headed for divorce, and they realized that they really had a deep and abiding love for each other. He did his work. She got support. They eyes wide open, move forward. And I hear these stories all the time. So this is not just one story of thousands. But he got her a starfish necklace because a starfish regenerates. If it loses a leg, it regenerates. And they were kind enough to send me an ornament, and I have that, and I look at it every day because I want to be reminded that there is a lot of hope for for couples. It's a path, and but you guys can be on it together, and learn. So hopefully you're also engaging in, like, Eddie Caparucci's webinar is about couples and healing the relationship. So there are lots of couples who do navigate this. And so but where all the ones that are in great relationships now are probably, unfortunately, not all on our group. So
Yeah, the nice thing about when a couple heals in this way is usually the addict has been pretty shut down from before the couple even met. So the betrayed partner was never getting the full person that he or she was married to. And as an addict heals, we learn to become more honest and more vulnerable. We actually can become better partners than you ever had before the betrayal. Um, and relationships can actually become closer because the addict is more willing to be vulnerable. But both parties have to do the work, and yeah, but it happens.
so yeah. So next question: do sex addicts have a choice when they act out, or are they so far into there's no stopping the behavior? That depends. If they're in active addiction, like they're, like I said,
There's,
old part of the brain, lizard part of the brain, just go act
yeah.
out. So
One of the things we teach in our work groups, I think it's the level 1 work group, we talk about the cycle of addiction. And there's a trigger where I start to have an emotion that I don't want to feel. And then I start to go into fantasy. I start fantasizing about drinking or using or acting out sexually. And then I start ritualizing it. I start cruising the streets where I used to pick up prostitutes, and then I'm acting out, and then I'm regretting it. And then I'm back to, at the beginning of the cycle. It just kind of spins. And we always say, picture a boulder at the top of the hill. When I'm triggered, that boulder starts to do this. But if I don't move forward, I can shore it up, shove some little rocks under it, hold it steady, and stop it. But once that boulder gets to about here, when I'm in fantasy and ritualization, it's going to just run me over. So there is a point where I can't stop it without external intervention, but there is also a point where I can. And that's when I recognize that I'm triggered. I'm starting to have fantasies. This is not good for me. Pick up the phone and call somebody in recovery who knows my crap and tell them what's going on. So yeah.
yeah, there's a new partner site, We Tonglen, WETONGLEN, and I don't know what it means, but it's a you have to get permission to join. But I've been on that group, and the partners really struggle with, that these addicts are choosing to do this, and they don't understand how we could not be. And I shared, like I'm an addict. My daughter is an adult. She has never known me in active addiction, and she still knows that my brain thinks different. She and her dad have gone, ha, and so, like, for people who aren't addicts, it seems crazy, and we are, on some level. But if you understand that our addict brain, always gets to think something first, and we have to go override, we can genuinely mean we love you, and we can compartmentalize and go act out and do whatever that's very hurtful to ourselves and you. And so, early on, before there's any tools, I don't think addicts, I mean, I every day wanted to not do what I was going to do the next day, because I just didn't stop. But once I got some recovery tools, if I chose to act out now, I absolutely am making a choice. I have lots of tools. I've got lots of people I can call. It would absolutely be a choice, and I know it. And so, I choose not to, and I choose to do what I need to do to stay in recovery. So, but it does seem crazy to those of you that aren't addicts. I'm sorry. Anything to add?
No, that kind
Okay.
of.
I rambled on. Scott, great seeing you again after last Thursday's cruise control group. So Scott subbed in. We both kind of occasionally sub in on some of the drop-in groups, so sometimes you'll see us. Porn and masturbation has never been an issue for me. I'm a meth addict as well as a sex and love addict. 30 days clean, yay! And only use porn and extreme masturbation when high. Is porn going to be a gateway for future? Do I need to never go back to it? I know from working with NA, even though my alcohol was never an issue for me, it causes my brain to want to keep drinking or bring me back to my drug of choice. Should I worry about porn similarly? Also, I now check on my motives and my fantasy and masturbation, but since it's never been an issue, can I continue to masturbate, or should I not do so for a period of time to ensure it also doesn't become a substitute addiction? That's a lot. So pick away. That's a lot.
Again, without being deeper into knowing your situation, I can't give you an exact answer. It's more for your CSAT therapist and sponsor, or if you come to treatment, we'll certainly work through all this with you when we have more time and can pick and ask questions and things. But my general response is stay away from porn. If you were using porn as part of your, substance abuse, I only use porn and extreme masturbation when high. Okay, so guess what? Those could be linked. Porn is always going to be a trigger for you. If you start looking at porn, you're going to want to get high again. That's very likely. Masturbation, when we do circle plans with guys, when I work with guys, the inner circle is your bottom line behaviors, things you cannot do. The middle circle is slippery stuff that might lead you into relapse, and then the outer circle is the healthy stuff. Sex addicts new to recovery always say, where do I put masturbation? And they're talking about just straight up masturbation, no pornography. Does it go in the inner, where it's a bottom line behavior, or middle? I would say for now, put it in your inner. Later, it can probably slide into your middle circle, where you check your motivations and your fantasies. But if you've been doing meth and acting out sexually, it's too easy to lapse into meth sex fantasies. Again, tune in Wednesday with David Fawcett. David is the expert, and ask this exact question. I think he's going to give you the same answer. I've been co-hosting that with him for long enough. You need to stay away from porn, and you need to be really careful for a good long while with masturbation. And I would say at least 90 days total abstinence would probably be a good idea for you. And you will not explode. I don't care what your friends tell you about. If you don't have an orgasm, things are going to explode down there. It doesn't work that way. It won't happen. So.
Yeah, and I agree, and I would invite you to stop all of the addictive compulsive behaviors. 90 days. I think that that's a really good, and it's going to be mighty uncomfortable because it's going to be, and having to experience things that you don't want to. I mean, that's how we, numb out. But Dr. David does talk about, even people who go, oh yeah, I'm not an alcoholic. It removes your inhibitions, and then you make poor choices. So even if that wasn't the issue, then you might go, yeah, well, hooking up with that person, or it's just a little meth. What does it matter? So it reduces your inhibitions to the point where could be part of the problem just by giving you that less than clear option of, this is a bad choice. So
Yeah, and just so people know, when we say, you might want to think about total abstinence for 90 days, that's 90 days. That's not forever. The goal of sex addiction recovery is much more like an eating disorder where you can't give up eating. You just need to learn to eat in healthy ways that are healthy for you. And, my food intake is very different than Tammy's, but she doesn't do sugar, which I find bizarre.
I do sugar, but I've really I've cut back. Like that was
Okay.
I could have mainlined it, so I had to really work on that.
Yeah, but we each find ways to eat healthy for us, and each sex addict will have, the circle plan for every sex addict looks different because every sex addict has different goals. So yeah, it's not a forever thing, but it's a clear your head for 3 months thing.
Yeah, and I think really having, I'm not a journaler, but I think having a journal of, yeah, I'm really feeling compulsive about this, and I want to do that. I mean, having something where you can look at it with your sponsor and go, oh, when these feelings started coming up, that's when I really felt like I should go masturbate. So more information and more data about yourself will be, I think, useful as you move forward. But yay, 30 days clean, that's good. So okay, next question. After 37 years of marriage and now 1 year of separation, I finally understand that my SA husband doesn't want to change. I'm so sorry and heartbreaking for him. How can I cope with the anxiety and grief? It isn't easy to know that new people with a pandemic. I can't really pay for specific therapy. Should I look for medication? No, please, I need advice. Well, I'm not a huge fan of medication. So
I'm not a fan of meds either, but meds can help with situational depression, but speak to a proper doctor first. Don't just go grabbing them from your friend who happens to have some.
Or a general practitioner. I mean, because they'll hand out meds,
Yeah,
so go
yeah,
get a proper diagnosis. And if you really do have clinical depression, even if it's short term, then a medication, yes. But just, of course you're going to hurt. It's like, so there's a grief group. I'm going to put that on in the rooms. Sophia Cottle does a grief group. Actually, I'll do the Super Saturday. So she did a video on it on Super Saturday Recovery Summit too. So I would encourage you to get support. I mean, it's a whole bunch of people that are let's see, attendees and panelists. There it is. So the Super Saturday Recovery Summit, though, Sophia did a video on what did she call it? It's called The Empowerment of Deep Grief Work. Does that sound like sounds very empowering versus like, I have to, shrivel up and die from this. So, and you're here. Join more of these groups. Join the drop-in groups. That I know so many. In fact, I'll share this. Dr. Rob was talking about somebody, doesn't matter, where they started going. They were reluctant to go to the drop-in groups, and they did, and they found that that's their people, And so, it is other people that are really striving. And we put the link for Wee Tonglen in the chat. Pick that up. Join that group. Like, they're it's an active group, and they're sharing good resources with, within the group. So you are not alone, even if it feels like it. Is there anything else I can do when I'm at work and run into people that have participated in my acting out? Oh, and I let my wife know right away that I saw, and so just now, I'm sorry, this is triggering for her, and she berates me anyway. I have to tell the truth and tell it faster, right? We use that at the treatment center. Our clinical director says, tell the truth and tell it faster. So that's where that came from. So thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, you may want to work out, if you have a couples counselor, this is where to do it. Some boundaries with your wife about what she wants to know and how she wants to hear about it. And maybe how she will respond, some boundaries around how she responds. If she does want to know and she does want to know right away, you can say, I will definitely do this, but when you berate me for doing what you're asking me to do, it's tough for me. I'm supposed to tell the truth. I'm supposed to tell it right now. Yes, you are supposed to tell the truth and tell it faster, but you can put boundaries around that. Some betrayed partners will say, if you just see that person, I don't need to know. If you sit down and have a cup of coffee with that person, you better tell me, and then they have a right to be mad because you just had coffee with an acting out partner. Not cool. But if you just pass each other in the hall, that's a different story.
Yeah.
So you may want to set some boundaries. What does she really want to know? When does she want to know it? How does she want to be told? Because you may be giving her information that she doesn't really want at this moment.
Well, and some people live in a small community. You may run into them in a grocery store. I mean, like, there's lots of places. So having the conversation of what, and I agree with Scott too, having a professional help you guide that conversation would be, I want to be honest with you, but I also don't want to, traumatize you or have you berate me. How can we
like I
make
trigger
sure
you
that
every time I tell you this? What can we do so I can still be honest with you, and not trigger you?
Yes, and you said run into, so assuming that's a casual passing and not a cup of coffee. So,
And there are
okay.
sex addicts, by the way, who have quit their job and gotten a new job because it was too tough on their relationship. So that's a possibility. It may need to happen at some point. What's more important, your marriage or your job? So.
And that is true. There's a lot of people that have done that. So, what's the difference between a sex addiction recovery program plan and a sex addiction program who sex offended only once, suppressed his gay side, but said that's why he's doing the current sex addiction program followed. His current CSAT does not know what he did, but was reported by previous CSAT, but nothing happened from lack of information. Please help explain the difference and if there are similarities to the program.
So I think the question is about, is there a difference between sex addiction treatment and sex offender treatment?
Correct. That's what I'm picking up too.
Yeah. His current CSAT does not know what he did. This makes me a little nervous that he's not.
Yeah, that makes me really highly.
So there may be reporting
nervous.
requirements. So a CSAT will sometimes say, I have reporting requirements. So if you've offended, you have to be super general in what you tell me or whatever. Otherwise, I have to call and report you. So there could be reasons for that. There are some articles. You know what, Tami, I'm just going to post links to the Psychology Today articles that Rob and I did. And why don't you jump ahead to the next question, because this is pretty specific, and I'm going to put the very specific place to find the very specific answers in the chat feature.
And the one thing I'm going to share before we move on while he's doing that is, there are addicts and there are offenders, and there are some, I'm a math person. So the Venn diagram where the ovals or the circles intercept, there are some that are addicts and offenders, but there are a lot of offenders that are just offenders, and there are a lot of addicts that are just addicts. So it isn't, they aren't interchangeable labels. Okay, next question. I've been in SAA and seeing a CSAT for about 7 months, 53 days sober. Yay, I'm currently working through step 4. Do you have any recommendation for working step 4? Thanks. There are so many guides to that. In any of the big books, you're in SAA, so the SAA big book would have a guide to doing that. There, Patrick Carnes did a gentle path through the 12 steps. That's across the addictions, and that can be really helpful. Working with your sponsor on how to do that. For me, it was it's a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, and for me, I had to be reminded to also put the good in, because I was, of course, writing all the horrible, shameful things. But I really appreciate that you're on step 4. I encourage you to continue to work on that and do step 5. The first 9 steps are such a healing process. So getting it isn't about a race to get through them, although there is that one program, and I can never remember the name of it, but where they sit down and they do it all in a day, and then you do it frequently. That's how the founders of the 12 steps did it initially. So it wasn't this 2 years later we're finally getting around to doing our 4-step, which is highly relapse prone then. So so those are some of my suggestions on the previously recorded videos on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Under resources, you'll see videos. And Charlie Rizian did a really good breakdown of the 12 steps, like word by word. And I've been in recovery a long time, and I had not ever really done a study of what each word means. You may find that helpful as well. So any other thoughts on that, Scott, or were you busy?
Still busy.
Okay, so the next one. My SA husband from Australia, welcome. My SA husband, sober since discovered a year ago, has completely lagging in his recovery. He stopped seeing his therapist after about 2 months. He occasionally listens to podcasts with me and was starting to learn some empathy. The shame he was feeling was making his life unbearable, so he finally went to a general addiction rehab for 3 weeks, and he has made some progress in dealing with the past trauma. Now he seems to have forgotten all empathy. What do I do? I would hand him out of the doghouse, and listen to the podcast too, but I would hand him out of the doghouse, Dr. Rob says, and it's a paperback and it's light, to read it and then throw it at him. But, I don't think that's necessarily a good choice. But I mean, it talks about rebuilding trust. What do you need to do to build empathy? I would really encourage, because I think Eddie Caparucci's videos, and I posted the link, in the chat, are great at, helping couples navigate, getting, his is called Getting to the Other Side. So here's where you were and you want to get to the other side in your relationship. So thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, empathy doesn't happen overnight, and it's men are not wired for empathy the way women are. That's a physiological fact, but it's not like we don't have empathy. We're just not wired for that deep, empathetic, holistic connection that women are. So we have to work at it. And he may be more focused on working on something else right now, like his past trauma or just staying sober day to day. And addiction kind of got shoved to the side for a while. So you can let him know that you enjoyed it when he was actually having feelings with you instead of at you, and maybe ask him to put a little effort into that while he's working on other things. But early recovery, I mean, active addicts do not display empathy, even if they have empathy. And early recovering people also struggle to display empathy, even if they're having it. We're just not there yet. So, but I'm not happy that he stopped seeing his therapist after 2 months. I'm glad he went to a rehab, but a general addiction rehab for a sex addict is not going to cover it all.
I would encourage him. I mentioned earlier that we have the next work group, level 1 of the Sex and Porn Addiction 101 work group, starting on Saturday. So March 6th, Jonah Anderson is going to be leading that particular one. It's online via Zoom. I would welcome him to participate. We've had guys that have participated from all over the world. Some of them get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to participate.
I've had guys from get up in Japan. They set their alarm for 1:45. They get up. It's 2 a.m. when they start their group with me. I'm like, okay, cool. And they never miss a week. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, so, yeah. And I think he would get a good foundation specific to this addiction. So I would encourage you to consider that. And then we actually have a couples group that is starting on April 8th. Susie LeBrock has done that. And that is about communication, healthy sexuality. I mean, it's like grieving losses together. I can't remember a whole list, but check that out as well. That's another, it's going to be 2 hours. Last time we did it 90 minutes, and we just figured out we needed a little more time. So it's a 6-week, 2-hour online via Zoom small group, but that may be another place for you guys to talk about empathy and communication skills. So, okay, next question. What percentage of sex addicts work to beat the addiction? I get always caught at, well, when people go, I'm going to get this. And I was like, I tried that. That didn't, it really is surrender, so we'll talk about that in a second. Who work to beat the addiction, and what percentage of them decide they can manage it on their own and never get help? I know this is probably hard to say as you only see the ones who care, but rough percentages.
I don't think there's no research on this, because any addiction statistics, if somebody gives you an addiction statistic, throw it out the window, because there's no way to know who's an addict and who's not an addict. And, of the people who walk in the door, we can give you some rough numbers, but, of the people who walk in the door, can you separate those into who's serious and who's not? And I can't give you a rough percentage. I'm sorry.
And addicts lie. So if you go, if a treatment center goes, yes, 98% of our
treatment centers
addicts,
say we have a 90% success rate, ask them what they mean by success rate.
Yes, because that's not true.
Because it's,
But I
probably
want to
not
go back
what you
to,
would define as success.
right. And I want to go back to beat the addiction. Like I get a lot of calls and people are like, I want to fix this. I want to get over it. I want to get through it. And this is a chronic, forever disease. And I shared earlier, my adult daughter has never known me in active addiction, and she still knows my brain thinks different. I'm not going to beat this. I still know that addiction is waiting right here patiently. And if I choose to not live in recovery, it's waiting. So
addiction is like diabetes. If I treat it on a daily basis and make it a priority to not let diabetes rule my life, it won't. Addiction is the same way.
Mhm.
But if I decide I'm going to eat a whole chocolate cake, something bad's going to happen.
Exactly. Yes, something bad will happen. That's a lot of sugar. So, but okay. 2 days post disclosure. Ooh, my SAH, sex addict husband came and told me that he was dishonest about a question. He said he didn't look at the underage porn, and then he admitted he did. What should be the next step? Oh, that's a tough question. So, what are your thoughts?
This is a tough one. What I will tell you is, if you get mad and call the police will come, and your life will never be the same. Not only will his life not ever be the same, your life will never be the same. So, this is a problem that needs to be dealt with, but not a big fan of calling the police and bringing the legal system in. And if he works with the therapist, he needs to find out what the therapist disclosure rules are, what the reporting rules are. In California, we have pretty strict mandatory reporting. It's tough to treat somebody. So now, more generally, him lying about a question a couple of days ago in when you just found out, of course he lied. Of course he didn't tell you the truth about everything. He's an addict. Addicts, we lie when you put us under pressure, and he'll have to get deeper into the process and do a full disclosure before you actually know everything that happened. A therapeutic disclosure. So those are my thoughts anyway, Tami.
It is really challenging. So I concur with all of that. Somebody's asking about the chat is disabled, and I cannot remember how to change so that you can copy a link. I would invite you, if nothing else, to take a picture with your phone of the I'm serious of that. I will see if I can get it figured out, but don't hold me to that. So next question, what are some things I can do to trust my decisions again during recovery after massive long-term abuse from self and others? Get a posse, get a sponsor, work with other people. This is a female. Join that female drop-in group that I mentioned that's tomorrow night. I had to bounce ideas off of everybody because I could not trust, and I should not have trusted myself initially. I needed, outside voices to go, yes, that is a good choice. That one isn't your best choice, and to help guide me, because, I could throw Christmas lights on anything and make it, sound like a good idea, so I would get a good posse of support. What are your thoughts, Scott?
100%, you nailed it.
Okay, next question. I'm still trying to get the settings. Oh, I wonder if never mind. Okay, my wife wants to know if we have sex, does that make her part of my sex addiction problem, and will it trigger me to act out? I went through SILA 2 months ago, and my wife and I agreed to 90 days of abstinence, so we haven't had sex yet, but me acting out was would be massage parlors, escorts, masturbation, plus I'm a recovering meth addict.
Again, without knowing your full situation, can't exactly answer this question. What I will tell you is that just because 90 days is up, you don't immediately have to have sex. As a matter of fact, you can extend it for as long as you want. It takes two to tango, and if she's not comfortable having sex, you shouldn't have sex. And oh, by the way, if you're not comfortable having sex yet, you shouldn't be having sex yet. There are addicts who objectify their wives or partners and turn them into part of the addiction. I had one guy say to me once, I was cheating on my wife with my wife because he was having sex with an object instead of his actual wife. He was just using her as an object while he was fantasizing about other things. Not every sex addict does that. But she's worried about that, and legitimately. So you're going to have to talk about it and work through it, and you may need to start slowly and not jump straight into sex. You may need to start with holding hands and cuddling and just talking before you jump back into bed with each other. So yeah, and I mean, I applaud you for doing the 90 days of abstinence. I think that's great. But again, just because the 90 days is up doesn't mean it's time to jump back into bed. It just means it's time to start talking about it, maybe. So Tami?
Yeah, and well, Dr. David talks about sensate focused and all of those type of things, and that's where I was going with it. Don't just jump into, it isn't just about jumping into sex. It's about dating again, getting holding hands, all of those type of things. So it isn't about the act and like just having sex. It's about the whole experience, and so. But yeah, like what you said too, where does your head go if it's into fantasy and everything else, and probably still not ready. So, okay. Yeah, somebody said, look above the chat box, just gave the instructions to save in the chat, but I see the 3 dots and it just says panelists and everything else. So hopefully you took a picture of or wrote down like the old fashioned way with a pen, because we're out of time.
We are. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, we got to answer this one real quick. Is it possible for a sex addict to be addicted to sex and not be associated with any trauma? Not that I have seen. Well, it's not trauma.
Maybe there's a unicorn out there, but we haven't met them.
Yeah. So to me, it's grief, loss, abandonment, neglect. So I was sharing with somebody earlier, Neglect the Silent Abuser by Enid Gray. That like there are so many little forms of neglect, that traumatize all of us. So anyway, so whether there's so many guys that come to our treatment program that that think they've never had trauma. We give a trauma assessment because we want to check, and gosh, guess what? Often there's a lot of stuff that's in there, but we normalize it so much because that's just how we grew up, or that's just what happened, and I've survived all that, so that doesn't matter. So I would say there's something, it may not just be trauma, abandonment, neglect, grief, loss.
Yeah, when my therapist told me I had been sexually abused as a kid, I told him he was crazy, and then we had some conversations, and he kind of and I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah. There's always more, but we also in recovery have an opportunity to heal that. So. Yeah. Thank you, Scott, for joining us. Thank you all for your great questions. Sorry we didn't get to the last few. I apologize, but join us again. Bye, everybody.